All right, I think we're live. Hi, everybody. It's Debbie from Delta CX, and today is Thursday, February 13, 2020. Still can't believe it's 2020. And I am super thrilled to pieces to be doing today's podcast with Dimitri and Jeff, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. This is what hiring managers think about boot camps. And so there's going to be a lot to talk about. Join in. If you are listening live, join in on LinkedIn. I'll be opening up those chat windows. Join in on YouTube for your live comments and questions for the three of us. And while I open lots of windows, I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves and pronounce their last names. And so, Dimitri, let's start with you. Tell us about you.
All right, thanks, Debbie. So I'm Dmitry Nekrasovski. I am currently Senior Product Design Manager at a company called HashiCorp. It's a vendor of cloud infrastructure solutions. I've been in this role for about 9 days now. So I'm very, very new to the role, but not to product design or to design hiring. So I've been doing product design for about a little bit over a decade now, and leading teams of product designers and doing hiring for product design roles for the last 6 years or so.
Excellent. Great to meet you. These are actually strangers to me, so we're all meeting them today. So, Jeff, over to you. Tell us about your world.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Russell, and currently work for PaySimple in Denver, Colorado, and I run the UX team here. And I've been kind of in this world for close to 20 years now, and have held roles in the past as manager and building out teams and processes. So hopefully I have a few insights.
Right. I hopefully picked some great people here. And of course, apologies to people watching the video version as I cannot control the brightness of my light today due to my smart home acting up. It's that smart. So I apologize that for those of you looking at the video, I'm on the surface of the sun. But other than that, I'm fine. Thank you. So I want to jump right in and let the viewers and listeners know that I ran into both of you on a LinkedIn topic. So someone else had posted, someone I don't even know, had posted something about some of the concerns that a lot of us have with the all of the up and coming UX juniors. That a lot of them have gone to boot camps and trade schools. They've got their certificate and they're out there looking for jobs, and they're having a hard time finding jobs. And you had both posted replies to that, which I thought were super insightful. So I'll start with Dimitri because you had written something that blew me away. You had said something like, you see a lot of resumes and portfolios, and I don't want to misquote you, but I think you had said you felt like only 1 to 2% of those people were qualified for the jobs they were applying for. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, I do, and I don't have a conversation in front of me, but I definitely. To step back a little bit, I have been in the hiring manager sort of mind space for a little while now, and I would say the last three roles that I've been at. Um, I've been typically getting hundreds of applicants per role. And recently, a large majority of these have come from people with backgrounds in boot camps. And it's definitely been my experience that maybe 1 or 2% of these applications are actually applications that I feel are strong enough to move forward with, even to the sort of first round of interviews, whether that be recruiter screeners or hiring manager screeners. And the reason for this is that in many cases, well, there's a number of reasons, and we can get into those in more detail later on. But let's just say that by and large, these applications are just not strong enough for me to even consider moving them forward to the next round.
Yeah, and I definitely do want to get into asking you guys about some of your criteria and some of the things you look for when you're reviewing portfolios. But I'll switch over to Jeff because you were part of that conversation as well. And I remember, and I don't want to misquote you, I'm not looking at the conversation either, but I think you had said something like, hey, your Pay Simple isn't a giant company and we really can't afford to bring, I'm paraphrasing, we really can't afford to bring on someone, even who might be junior or mid-level, who can't really hit the ground running. So tell me about your experience as a hiring manager and what you're seeing, especially when it's a junior job or somebody coming from a boot camp or trade school.
Yeah, for sure. I believe what you said is pretty right on, and many of my roles have been at smaller companies. Denver is home to pretty amazing startup culture, and it's really firing on all cylinders now. So the companies that I've been working for are sort of in the sweet spot of, I don't know, let's call it 50 to 200 people, somewhere around in there. At that size, you need people who can execute. They're, especially if it's a team of, 2 or 3, there's not a lot of time to train and to mentor and teach. That's always definitely part of my job, and it's something I really enjoy doing, but there's a limit to that, right? So, it's a lot easier to sort of mentor someone who's been doing this for 2 years than it is to get someone who this is their first job. So, that's just my reality. I think if you go to a bigger place, they have more resources, they have more time, a Google, an IBM, I don't know, they have a lot of that framework in place, and they can bring on a junior designer and they can assign someone to them who spends half their time mentoring them, and that's awesome and that's great. But we just don't have that luxury.
It's not most jobs.
Correct.
Yeah, and we can say Google and a couple of others, but in reality, it seems to be just them. I'm not seeing a mountain of jobs that are like, we want a UX junior, 0 experience is fine. We're going to take care of you. I was looking the other day at UX internships, and they wanted either at least a year of experience in UX or you're currently pursuing a master's in it.
Wow.
An internship.
Yep.
Ouch.
That's slightly crazy. So I do want to sort of, I would definitely agree with the point that Jeff just made in terms of needing people to hit the ground running. I do want to differentiate between the ability to hit the ground running and people's seniority, because to me, those are often a little bit orthogonal, in the sense that I have had the pleasure to work with and mentor a number of junior designers that I hired because I was confident that they would be able to hit the ground running, and they did. And that's been at companies of varying size, anywhere from 80 to 800, 900 employees. Where I am right now, we're at about 850 employees, and we do have a UX apprenticeship program that so far we've only run through with one person. So it's not by any means a large scale program, for the same reasons that Jeff mentioned, because ultimately we need to execute. We need to, we can't afford to spend a large chunk of our time as a team, mentoring people and getting them up to speed. But that being said, I do want to sort of go on the record as saying these are 2 different things. There are junior designers out there who can hit the ground running. Unfortunately, most people who graduate from boot camps, in my opinion, do not fall in that category.
Yeah, so I want to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, I just want to piggyback on that real quick if I could.
Yes.
In sort of thinking about all of this in the last couple weeks, one thing that sort of dawned on me was this idea that let's not forget the student, right? Like boot camps, I mean, I don't paint them as the bad guy personally. I mean, and I'll get into that later, but a lot of this depends on the students themselves. So take, for example, me, myself, I actually went into a computer programming course several years ago. And with the goal of like, you know what, maybe I should try my hand at this coding thing. And I already knew HTML, CSS, little JavaScript and whatever. And so I started taking that, and it wasn't, too long, maybe less than a year in, before I was like, nope, not for me. Like, my brain does not work this way. I am good at what I do, and let's level up on that. And so I think that there are two pieces here to that equation, which is, number one, not everyone is cut out to be a UX designer. I mean, that's just reality.
Absolutely.
Like, but I think that there's sold this sort of romantic tale of like, man, you get to like, draw pictures all day and make $100,000 a year. And like, and that is just not at all what our job is like. I think the other piece to this is where I will put a little bit of the blame on the boot camp, is they're doing a bit of disservice by not pulling those students aside and saying, hey, I'm not seeing this stuff click for you, and maybe you should consider something else. I mean, in looking at recently some of the curriculums and all of that, they all talk about career coaching and one-on-ones, and it's like, well, what kind of discussions are you guys having if you're not talking about someone's ability and skill set and how they're progressing or not? So
And I can answer that because I've been interviewing a lot of people who went through boot camps, because I've been trying to learn more about what's going wrong here, so I can try to figure out if it's something I and others can fix or improve. And I found that the career coach is mostly, let's make sure your resume looks good. Let's make sure you're applying to X number of jobs a week. Let's take a look at your portfolio. Yeah, your portfolio looks great. I've reviewed about 60 portfolios in the last 2 months. I thought less than 10% of those people looked like they could do a job, but they've all told me I can't get good feedback on my portfolios because even people from my school say that portfolio looks great. And then I go in and tear it up a little bit. So I do tend to place more blame on the boot camps. I definitely don't want to blame students. I feel like they're the victims here. But rather than go down that path too much, I know we've had one of the first questions as soon as you guys started talking was, what do you look for in candidates? I think we could probably talk about that for hours. I'll start with Dimitri. So imagine you have that, I'm curious what your apprenticeship asks for, whether you ask for 0 experience or a little, but then if you have a real junior job outside of the apprenticeship or internship, what do you tend to look for?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and unfortunately, I'm not the best person to speak to the apprenticeship program at my current
Because it's day
employer,
9.
because it is day 9. So I'm not even going to attempt to do so. We have stuff that my colleagues have posted on Medium about the program and about our team's experience so far with it. So I would refer those who are interested in learning more about it to those posts. Now, in terms of what I am looking for in a junior candidate, I think in addition to the ability to hit the ground running, which may seem like a sort of a not dubious, but
General.
difficult to evaluate objectively quality. I think so. Just to step back and sort of situate what I'm about to say in some context. My whole career has been spent in B2B enterprise UX and product design. So these are very complex products that myself and my teams and my team members need to be able to understand effectively at a level of business model, product sales cycle, product go-to-market strategy, product technical architecture, just all the acronyms that come with that. we need to be able to understand these things and understand them deeply in order to, design effective user experiences for these products. And we need to understand the different personas involved. Usually these products have multiple personas. They have different roles and permissions. They have different workflows, often highly complex workflows. So all of these things require a fair bit of intellectual brain power. That's sort of it's hard to say this any other way, but you need to be able to grok this stuff, and you need to be able to grok it fast. You need to be able to sit in a room with really, really smart people who are your cross-functional partners on the product side, on the engineering side. Some of these people have PhDs in computer science and other technical disciplines, and you need to be able to communicate at their level, and also to be able to challenge them and to really ask the right questions of them in order to be able to get them to thinking from a customer or user's perspective as well. So very strong communication skills are a must. This is oral, written, various kinds of deliverables, or I should say artifacts, because I don't really want team members to be thinking in terms of deliverables. We're not working in an agency context. Our value to the business is not evaluated in terms of how nice looking the artifacts are that we produce. It is evaluated in terms of how are we able to effectively influence the teams that we work with, so that we ship products that help our customers do better and users do better work, and help the companies grow in terms of revenues and profits. So.
Okay, so it sounds like, to try to sum that up, there's a lot of things you would be looking for in a resume or portfolio, but it sounds like more from the interview, possibly, where you would be looking for personality traits and intelligence levels and communication skills that are probably more brought out in an interview.
Very much so. So I would say in terms of resume and portfolio, I'm looking for markers. I'm looking for hints that will that make me confident that this person is worthy of talking to further down in the process. Of markers of these things, like ability to understand and communicate complex concepts, ability to effectively work with very smart people in cross-functional teams, ability to really think both strategically and at a level of design details, ability to effectively solve complex design problems and evaluate trade-offs, and things of that nature.
Now, I do want to hear from Jeff, but I want to ask you one follow-up question quickly on that, because obviously what you're describing is a really, really, I don't want to say intense, but a really complete job that requires strategy and tactical approaches and tasks and knowledge. And I guess my quick question, and then I promise I want to hear from Jeff, is how do you do that? Sounded like somebody, the way you described it, I was thinking like, wow, that's got to be a senior, wow, we really need someone with years of experience who can showcase these skills and abilities and traits. Do you have in your mind, and I don't know if you do or don't, do you have in your mind how much of that, or how you perceive that for a junior versus how you perceive that for someone with more experience?
I do, and I think your comment is well taken, in the sense that if you think about the things that I've talked about, the ultimate expression of all those things put together would be a very well-rounded senior or principal level designer. So obviously that is not a fair, it is not a fair expectation of a junior level person just entering the industry to be an expert or master at all of these things. What I'm looking for is very much potential. It's that they're starting to think about these things. It's that they're starting to think about how to simplify complex experiences while considering various trade-offs. They're starting to think about how to communicate with people from other functional backgrounds and influence them to understand the customer or the user's point of view. Yeah, and they're starting to demonstrate these skills, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super polished and every I dotted and every T crossed. It has to be directionally going, the person needs to demonstrate to me that they have the potential to bloom and to develop into this very well-rounded senior or principal level designer down the road with the right coaching and mentoring and experience.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask Jeff the same things, but I want to remind everybody who's joining us live that we are taking questions and comments, both in the LinkedIn chat and the YouTube chat. I'm checking them from time to time, so please ask any questions that you have. So, Jeff, tell us a little bit about when you have an open junior job, what are some of the things that you're looking for, and what are your expectations for someone at that junior level?
For sure. This to me kind of gets to the heart of the matter, I think. And there, while I agree with some of the things, and I guess at the higher level, like the concept of what Dimitri's getting at, I actually see it a little bit differently. And so I've got like kind of 3 points that I'd like to touch on and can kind of flesh out some of those. So first off, some of these programs, they're really too short to learn anything deep. You're getting 10 weeks to be quote unquote become a UX designer. Like that's not how this works. That's not how anything works. You know what I mean? Like you don't go to a 10-week coding boot camp with no previous experience and get a job as a developer. I mean, that's just not how it works. What you're going to be doing is triaging bugs and, like having a developer over your shoulder, code reviewing all of your stuff. I mean, like that's the reality. So I think that, to start with, if I were a student, unless I had some background in art, design, I had a few years under my belt at a product focused company, I would not for a minute entertain the thought of going to a 10-week course and think that I could come out with anything valuable and meaningful. That's just my opinion. So like I'll put that out there. The second point I want to make, and this post, I think we sort of touched on this a little bit. They're spitting out graduates who know how to write a case study that looks exactly the same as everyone else's case study. There's a great article on, I've got it pulled up here. I believe it's on, what is it? uxdesign.cc, one of those Medium channels that I think has some decent content. And I encourage everyone to read it. It's called The Case Study Factory. And it really dives into what's happening here. And, it breaks down like, yep, here's the formula that everyone is taught. And it comes out and they all look the same. And this kind of goes to a point that I'll circle back around to, but it's around that sort of like critical thinking piece. So the third point I want to make is they're really not, they're teaching some things that a junior designer needs to know, but they're also teaching a lot of stuff that no junior designer needs to fill their head with. So typically the curriculum looks like this. You start the curriculum. the whole point is, all right, we're going to use this entire time to design an app. So what are you going to do? You're going to do business case. You're going to vet the business idea to see if it's worth building. Then you're going to, find your target users. You're going to do user research. You're going to test and validate and And they're sort of, teaching you this in the context of design thinking. Here's the reality. No junior designer is going to build an app from the ground up. It's just not going to happen. I have only done that once. And I've been doing this for 20 plus years. It's just, that's not how it works. I don't need a designer to know a prioritization matrix. You know why? Because I'm going to tell them what their priorities are. I'm going to say, work on this. They are not going to be, talking to, investors trying to pitch an app idea to get money to build it. That's just not how any of this works, right? So typically what's going to happen is they're going to get hired at a company that's been around for a while. They already have their product and they need some help making it better. And so what I need them to come in. I need them to know how to use the software. So Sketch, Figma, I don't care, whatever it is. I need them to know design fundamentals. I don't want to spend my time explaining to them, why a headline font should be bigger than, a paragraph font or anything like that. Like, you need to know basic design principles, grid design and all of that stuff.
Gestalt principles.
Exactly. You need to, using a design system, okay, this design system exists. Don't customize it. Learn the rules and learn how to implement that. I need them to take excellent notes during meetings and interviews. I need them to be thoughtful in design reviews and critiques. And more than anything, always asking great questions. That is how you learn, is by asking how, what, when, why. The last point I want to say is this does go back to one of Dimitri's points, which I couldn't agree with more, which is I want to see problem solving skills and critical thinking. They should know how to do a design exercise, because guess what? When they come in the door, I don't give a crap about their portfolio, because it's going to look exactly like everyone else's. And, they're going to have an app that they did some, screens for and yada, yada, yada. And great, I've seen that a million times. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you a marker and put you in front of a whiteboard, and I'm going to throw some problems at you. And the reality is if you bomb that, I will cut it short and you're out. It's just, it's do not pass go, that, and to some degree, I don't even care about your resume, right? I don't care if you delivered pizzas in college. That doesn't mean anything to me. But really honing in on what Dimitri said, they need to be able to clearly and thoughtfully articulate their design decision. That is a skill that almost all of them are missing. They don't understand what a critique is. They don't understand what a review is. And you ask them why they did something, and it's deer in headlights, and it's well, because that's what they told me in the boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and we did a podcast on this a couple of weeks ago for those listening at home. I think it was episode 16 that we did about storytelling in UX and storytelling in projects and portfolios. And when I'm reviewing portfolios for people, I say, I imagine that this is you giving a presentation at a job. Hey, now that we did this project, I'm going to tell you about some of the key things that we did, some of the key things we learned, a couple of mistakes we made, and some things that we did and how it, and this went wrong and that went better and whatever. I imagine this is you giving that presentation. If your storytelling is poor, if you tell me too little, especially if you tell me too little, because what I say is I see a lot of portfolios with what I call I did a thing, which is, and then I researched. Cricket. Okay, how many people? Where'd you find them? What were a couple of key questions you asked? So I've got to agree with you guys, and I think you've summed it up great when you said this is really very much about the storytelling. It's very much about showcasing your critical thinking. I remember a portfolio that I saw, some of them stand out in a bad way in my head, and one guy was like, I am a leader, so I convinced everyone to do an empathy map. And my thought was like, thing one, you're still in college, so I'm not sure you're a leader. But thing two, I'm not going to interview you, but if I were, I would be asking you why you convinced everyone to do an empathy map. What were you missing from that project, from that process, from your knowledge that said, you know what we need right here? A mofo empathy map.
So I've
Go
been
ahead.
I've been frantically nodding. It's funny actually. I think Jeff started out as saying, "Well, I don't quite agree with some of the things that I said," but I feel like he just the things that he said I completely agree with, and I feel like he just expressed them in a much better way than I did. Um, and especially the emphasis on critical thinking and asking why, one thing I do want to add is in terms of storytelling, it's not just about how you tell the story, it's about which story you tell. And what I mean by this is I see way too many portfolios from, especially from bootcamp graduates, where the story they tell is, we had this project where we asked the question, how might we eliminate poverty in Africa? And I'm
In
like,
2 weeks.
in 2 weeks. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I couldn't give a crap about this. Like, you are telling the wrong story. Don't care. No, I'm sorry. You're not the right person to be tackling this design problem. And you've already lost any credibility you had. Like, I am pressing the no hire button as we speak in the ATS. So really, it's about telling the right kind of story as well. And as a junior designer, the kinds of stories that I'm looking for you to hopefully tell are stories about, as Jeff said, not building a photo sharing app from scratch. Couldn't care less, but that you worked on a design problem or a set of design problems that has some correlation to the kinds of design problems that you're likely going to experience within a sizable product company. So, doesn't matter what that exactly that problem is, but, choose a set of problems that will convince me that you have the skills, the transferable skills to do the kind of job that I want you to do.
Jeff,
Yeah.
you've unmuted.
There's a
Go
little
for it.
activity,
Over to
so I
you.
just like to mute myself when I'm not talking. But I
High
wholeheartedly agree,
empathy.
I wholeheartedly agree with what Dimitri said. It really is back to that sort of like, to some degree you could file it under know your audience a little bit. But he's exactly right. Like, tackling these monolithic problems, like, you unless you are working at IDEO, like, you're not doing that. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're working for the World Wildlife Foundation or something, like, these are not your problems. Your problems are, people don't understand what a word means, and is there, what word can you change it to make it a little bit clearer, right? Like, I mean, let's be honest, these are
That's the everyday problem.
some of the bread and butter of what we do. Now, I think there's another piece to this, which this applies to everyone, and not just UX designers, but I don't see it enough. And I if there's, I want to say, if there's one thing I can go away with, it's this, but it's important. And that is sort of know what you don't know. I mean, that too often people, I don't want to say people think they know everything, but they spend more time thinking about what they know than what they don't know. We have a motto on our product team, and I didn't make it up. I found it somewhere, but I bring it with me everywhere I go. It's called love the problem, not the solution. You should be giving me 20 solutions to any given problem. And if you come to me with one that you poured your heart and soul into, I guarantee almost every time it's not the right one, right? Like, because you're married to it. You're not thinking about what is the problem I am trying to solve? And there are a million ways we can do that. That is a skill that is just sorely lacking in the world today.
Yes, a better focus on the problem, because there's always endless solutions, but if you don't understand the problem to begin with, and I see in so many of these portfolios people guessing at problems, even where schools gave them time to do interviews or even some observational studies in some of these longer boot camps, or even university degrees. And it's still guess-o-rama, or a few times I've seen, here's the problem that our team got. Here's a couple of solutions we came up with. Now we'll do some research. Oh yeah. So Dimitri is just so people listening to the audio version later, face palm. I want to read you a comment we got in the YouTube channel, and then I'm going to ask you guys a fresh question. I'll let Jeff go first on the answer. Rodney says, I really appreciate your points about storytelling being important to what you are looking for in UXers' portfolios and experience. Yes, storytelling. Also, everyone go back and listen to our other podcast that was specifically about that. So that should be pretty recommended reading, recommended listening. One thing I want to ask you guys, and I want to see how concrete we can get, because I know people are looking for specifics. Think about some things you've seen in some of these portfolios that turned you off. Tell us about, like Jeff, start with you. Tell us about, oh man, when I get that juniors or mid-level portfolio and I see this or this or this, I am pressing the no hire button, or that person is off my radar. Jeff.
Yeah. Well, a couple things. So first and foremost, like I said, on some level, if you came out of a boot camp, I kind of don't care about your portfolio, because and that's because I know what I'm going to see. I'm going to see the same thing that everyone else has, which is just like you said, I did the thing. Hey, like the instructor said, think of a problem, sketch some ideas, interview some
Make an
people,
empathy map.
Right. And it's just this sort of very formulaic, stepped approach. And there is absolutely no thought as to why am I doing this? It really, and I get it. When you're young, you do things because your teachers tell you to. But I also think a good teacher will tell you, look, this step, while you need to know how to do it, doesn't apply right here. Like I said, strategy and prioritization, you're not doing that. I'm doing that. Like it's a valuable skill to have, but that's one you can learn on the job. Like why waste time on that? So what, for me, if I see that sort of, again, the case study factory, like everyone needs to read that. If I see that formulaic, like here's my project, problem statement, and then it's step one, what's the problem? Step two, ideate. Step three, and it's just this very formulaic. And there's a lot of just sort of like flowery words talking about all of that stuff. But the reality is that none of it is telling, number one, a story, but also none of it is getting to the heart of why. Why did you do this? Like what did you learn truly from this? I would, honest to God, I would love it if I came across a portfolio where someone like said, here was the thing, here's what I feel like I didn't really learn and what I would like to go back and cover more of. Or, we were supposed to do this part, but I really didn't think that our project needed it like that, and sort of using their brain and their critical thinking to say, yeah, this is part of the steps, but in thinking more about it, I realized that I didn't really need it. So to me, it's, it's a lot of that like formulaic, kind of stuff. I also think that there's something about like going back to the know what you don't know, there's this piece of it, which is like, okay, you go to school, you're a UX, get your UX designer certificate. UX is an umbrella. It is an umbrella. The things under that are UI design, interaction design, user research, data and analytics. I mean, it is, there are several skills in there. Now a good, well-rounded UX designer, knows those things in the context that they need to know them. But a good UX designer also knows, like, you know what, I can do that, but I'm not great at it. I'm not
Right.
great at research. I'm really not. Like, I do it because I have to, but it's not what I love doing, right? So, and I'm aware of that, and I can say, I can be very transparent in a job interview and say, you know, if you're looking for someone who's research heavy, I'm not your guy. And so, you know, to have a person who, again, you know, has been given at least all of insight into these things, to not have awareness, like, yeah, you know what, like, I'm really not a good visual designer. Like, okay, awesome, thanks for telling me, you know, but guess what, we have a design system, so you don't have to be. You know, stuff like that. So but to me, it's, I guess for me, it's when I look at it, it's that lack of awareness around, you know, their shortcomings, or, you know, what they didn't understand, or, you know, why something was done, you know, why it went well, what they learned. It to me, it's just like, if it's just this, like, yep, formula, here's my case study, then it's clear, like, you just did the thing.
Yeah, and I find that I'm looking for what you're saying too. I'm looking for someone to say, you know, I should have interviewed 20 people, 30, whatever number it is, before I went and made personas. I interviewed two. Here's what I know I should have done. Here's what we did. But what I find is the element you're saying gets put into a lot of the portfolios I've seen, but in a way that I find unappealing. And I call it the 8th grade book report. And I find that at the end of a portfolio, it'll say like conclusion and or assessment of project or something like that. And then it'll be like, I found this really challenging. I really liked the part where I got to talk to users. I really had to adjust more to take the users into account. And I'm going, this sounds like an 8th grade book report. Like, I really liked the book. This book was very good. You should read it. And I tell people, get that stuff out, because I'm imagining you're giving this presentation at the place where you work, and you wouldn't end it with, I was really challenged when I had to talk to other humans. And I wish it had more of what you're saying, which is less of a what I call the emotional self-assessment, and more of a critical or almost analytical assessment of, here's the process that the school put us through. But you know what? I could see where that process could have been better. But yeah, I did what the school said to do. So a couple of turnoffs from me. Dimitri, some of your portfolio turnoffs.
Yeah, so when definitely situational awareness, and I would sort of take it to the next level a little bit, because I mean the whole reason why we're having this conversation right now is because the industry has been flooded with people who have graduated from boot camps and are poorly qualified for most of the jobs that exist out there.
Right. I say
So
we're flooded with people, but not with talent.
correct. So if I am situational awareness plus empathy. If I am a bootcamp graduate who is sort of realizing, oh crap, you know, there's hundreds, thousands of others like me. We've sort of been sold a bill of goods. I need to find a way to differentiate myself in the marketplace. It's stuff out there. How do I do this? So then to me, the logical or a logical answer is hiring managers are not really interested in or particularly see as a value add the fact that you've been to a boot camp. So why not de-emphasize that in your application, in your portfolio, rather than positioning yourself as, look, I'm a newly minted UX design graduate of GA
Certificate.
or Lambda School, or, you know, fill in the blank name of the program. Be like, hey, yo, I'm a junior designer. I have worked on this kind of problem in this kind of context. Look, here's, you know, here are the organizations that I've helped. Here are my case studies. By the way, I happen to have gone to a boot camp.
Which you'll see on the resume.
Like, but just like de-emphasize it, like small font. at the bottom of the resume, because honestly, you're going to make a far, far stronger impression, and you're so much less likely to be no hired right away than if you make a big deal out of holding the exact same credential as thousands and thousands of unqualified people.
That's a great point. You know, I do not start my resume, my bio, my portfolio, or anything with, "Hi, I'm Debbie, and I have a bachelor's in music."
Right?
Because no
Yeah.
one cares.
True.
Yeah.
Come look at my work. Come
Absolutely.
look at what I can do. Come look
Yeah.
at what I can bring to a project. And so that's one. Any other turnoffs that you see maybe in people's process or storytelling that you tend to see often in these portfolios?
I mean, I have some personal pet peeves. I'm very detail oriented. So if you're going to send me shit that has typos in it or
Ooh.
lack of alignment in your visuals or, poorly thought through visual elements, poor attention to information
Inconsistency.
architecture, just don't bother. Just really, just don't.
I saw
Um,
one that had rounded buttons and then had squared off buttons, and I'm not even a visual
yeah,
designer, and I was like,
just like
"Ah!"
like just like the basics, right? You're not gonna if you're a musician, you're not gonna go into an audition for a band with like a guitar that's out of tune. So don't do this shit.
That's
Um,
ouch.
the basics. Pay attention to the basics. And certainly, like as we think about the various methods and various kinds of artifacts that you could have in your portfolio, like the stereotypical persona where you clearly made up all the stupid demographics info,
Yes.
just don't. It
Yes.
just looks terrible, and I know that you have no way that you could have, like, instead of that, I would much prefer to see like user roles that consist of one salient bullet. As long as that bullet helps you make design decisions, that is more valuable than your lovely persona, with stock photos that you pulled off of pexels.com.
My favorite fake persona, clearly totally made up by this person based on no interviews, was, this persona is a former NFL player. And I was like,
Yes, and you got to talk to former NFL players. Like, get real.
it was the project was like a clothing company for larger men, so I'm like, "Great, that's a huge, that's a huge group of society," and somehow the persona was former NFL player, and that was to explain, like, why they were so husky, and I was like, "Oh, you made this up. Oh, you completely made this up." A quick point I wanted to throw in before I ask you guys again more about your pet peeves is what I tell people when I see those mistakes of writing in their portfolio is everyone should read their portfolio out loud slowly, and you will catch the missing period. You will catch the missing word. Hopefully, you will catch the word that's spelled wrong. I do give a little bit of leeway to people who aren't native English speakers, but in general, I expect we UX is all about attention to detail and depth and quality. So I'm expecting you to show me you can do that.
Yeah, so
Jeff.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that, like, to me, that's 101. I don't care if you're sales, customer success, like, you dot your I's, cross your T's, like, be consistent. I mean, that you're exactly right. That is a absolutely fundamental skill of a UX designer. And if if your photos are all different sizes, for your portfolio, if your buttons are different colors, and like you said, some are square, some are round, like that, to me, like you're just not, you aren't thinking, like, and to me right away, that's like, do you even really possess what it takes to be a UX designer in general? So I wholeheartedly agree with that. There's one little thing that we don't need to get into now, but I really do want to touch on it, and hopefully we can revisit it.
We've only got 10 more minutes. Get
I
into
get it, I get
everything.
it,
You're
I
running
get
out of
it.
time.
But one of the things is like and I believe this is if I remember correctly, I'm paraphrasing something that you said in that thread, and the essential idea is the boot camps are spitting out all of these junior UX designers, and it's sure there's that piece of it that they're not ready to take on a role, but I'm gonna throw another thing out here. There aren't the jobs. There are not junior UX roles. Those are few and far between.
Yes.
You know, to sort of set someone up to go into a job market where the very job that you're training them to do, they don't exist. How do you reconcile that? Right? Like, I think in the beginning, it was a different story. I think in the beginning, you know, it was sort of the new hotness. People, you know, companies didn't even know what UX design was. They knew they needed
still
it.
Don't.
Right. Well, that's another topic. But you know, the idea being that, like, I think in the beginning it was like, oh, there's a role here, like, and a lot of these companies, let's face it, don't need a principal designer. Like, they need someone to maybe push some pixels and, you know, sort of talk to some users and all of that, and that's all well and good. But I think what we're seeing now is that all of those people, like, they're now, you know, seniors, or, you know, in that mid-range to senior level, and they're like me, like they're you know, the designer that's kind of running the show. I don't need a junior designer right now. Like, if I was going to hire anyone right now for my team, it would be a dedicated UX researcher who has 2 years of experience. That's my dream hire.
UX researchers, find Jeff. I'm at the end. I'm going to ask you guys if you're hiring. Yeah, that's yeah. Dimitri, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that Jeff is making. Like, the gold rush is over. You know, junior designers out of boot camps are competing with new grads from university programs. In many cases, like, I've had the opportunity to have co-op students on my teams, and let me tell you something. Like, you know, after 2 or 3 co-op terms, like, these you know, these people are way better qualified just by virtue of the time that they've invested in both their academic program and the practical experience that they've had a chance to obtain in the workplace. Like, if you are a boot camp graduate and you're competing against these people head to head, just forget it. Like, you're not gonna win.
Yeah.
And so it's hard, it's tough out there. And so, you know, I think the message to people who are considering entering boot camps needs to be, you know, check your assumptions, think twice, please, for your own sake, for the sake of, you know, your budget and the time that you're about to invest. You know, we are no longer at the point where these things are golden tickets to the job of your dreams. You know, if you bring a relevant background, you're probably running a better chance of landing a job out of these programs. But then, if you're bringing a relevant background, like if you're already doing graphic design, or you're already doing front-end development in the workplace, just go and find an employer that will let you start acquiring UX and product design skills on the job, and slowly move it, or maybe even quickly. Apprenticeship, you know. I've a number of the organizations that I've worked at have allowed certainly people on in their engineering teams to start moving their careers towards UX and product design. You know, apprenticeship, shadowing, splitting the time between their dev work and and UX work.
Yeah.
If you're in graphic design, same sort of thing. Like, go get a job in the marketing department of an organization where you're more likely to get to have hands-on design experience in more of an experienced design capacity. All these things are much more likely, in my opinion,
Yeah.
to get you towards your goal than going to a boot camp.
I think that's a great point that Dimitri makes, and like I just sort of like tapped on something, which is, I think that a lot of the people that you see in a boot camp, right? They're not fresh out of high school. They're not doing this instead of college. I'm sure some are, but a lot of the people that I know that have gone through it, like, they're in the working world, and they're sort of, they're in sales, and they're tired of it, or something like that. So what I like, I loved what Dimitri said about find an employer who is going to support you in that. And to me, like, if you already have a job at a company, find out if they are going to support you in this journey. Make your intentions clear. If they are not the place that's going to do that, then you could potentially be a lot better off by getting a job doing that same thing at a different company that is going to help pay for the boot camp and is going to have a framework in place where you are getting real world experience. When I was doing that whole coding thing, that's exactly what happened. My company paid for me to take all of these courses. And guess what? I was surrounded by brilliant developers, and I could come in and say, hey man, I just learned this, and they'd be like, that's right, that's wrong, you're never going to do that, and that type of exposure is absolutely invaluable. I would say if you're in a role and you don't like it, don't quit and go into a boot camp and for 10 weeks and think you're going to come out getting a better job for more money, because like I say, the jobs aren't there, and that's just not how it works. I think sort of looking around you, looking at your network, looking at the resources that are available to you, get creative, try to make it work in that context. And I feel like you will automatically have greater success and fulfillment in your role.
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling we could go another hour with this, but I know we're gonna have to wind down. You guys have work days to get to, and I'll go to sleep at some point. But I thank you, both of you, so much. This was fantastic. I know we could say a lot more. Hopefully, this is helpful to the people listening. I also think a couple of things for me. I think that companies have to look at bringing back the apprenticeship, and yes, we want someone who can come in and hit the ground running, but we also have to understand that not everybody is at that point, or that means different things to different people. And that also means F your ageism. You've got to start bringing in more seniors and veterans who are going to be there to support your newer people, no matter what age they are. And another thing I'm calling for, and I want to hear what each of you thinks of this, is I am calling for people like you guys who see these boot camp resumes and portfolios over and over, whether they're General Assembly or Design Lab or Career Foundry, it doesn't matter who they are. Have you ever reached out to General Assembly, Career Foundry, Design Lab and said, hi, I'm a hiring manager. I just saw 50 portfolios from your company and I don't even like to look at them. You're not sending me what I need. Does anybody care what I need as a hiring manager? I don't want to see your people. Like I want the schools to get the feedback that the schools are failing the employers. Have you guys ever thought about reaching out to a school and saying, you're failing the students, you're failing me?
So unfortunately, I have not. I don't feel particularly confident that they would be open to that sort of feedback. Ultimately, they're businesses. They're in the game to make money, and they're in the game to maximize the number of people that pay for their programming. And it's not clear to me at all that they're in the game in the best interest of the students.
I
I can see that, Jeff.
Yeah, I second what Dimitri said. I do know someone who was part of General Assembly, and I've always wanted to kind of pick her brain a little bit about that experience and all of that. I just haven't done it. One of the things I struggle with is like the idea of proactivity and being better. Like I don't struggle with that because it's so like I'm always striving for that. But what I'm getting at is like, is it my responsibility to reach out to the school and say you're failing the students? I mean, and I'm not like, I don't want to make it all about like responsibility and like, who needs to do what, but like Dimitri's right. Like they're in this for the money, and if they cared, they would be reaching out to real world people. And you go to their website and you sort of see, oh, we've placed people at this place and this place and this place. And like, those are all success stories, but are you keeping in touch with your students when they get rejected from 3 jobs in a row and saying, oh man, like maybe I should call, that guy up and ask why they didn't want to hire him? I mean, if the school doesn't care, then me contacting them to say, by the way, you're doing this, I mean, they're still not going to care.
It's always my dream that someone will care, but you're right. They don't care. And especially with General Assembly was bought out by Adecco Staffing, and some of these schools have VC money, and so they're only accountable mostly to the VCs. So we're in a bad spot. So I know we need to wrap up. We're going a few minutes late. I hope I'm not keeping you guys from meeting. So very quickly wrap up. We'll start with Dimitri. Tell everybody where they can find you, how they can follow you somewhere, and if you are hiring.
Hey, so I am Dmitry N, Dmitryn on Twitter. I'm Dmitry Nekrasovski on LinkedIn. You're probably better off going to my Twitter handle since my name is not exactly easy to spell. I am hiring for a senior role right now on my team. And my organization, HashiCorp, is also hiring for a user research role. So definitely feel free to look us up and apply if you're qualified. Thanks.
Excellent. And Jeff, tell us your story. How do we follow you, and are you hiring?
Yeah, I'm pretty allergic to social media, so LinkedIn is going to be your best bet. I'm going to put a little caveat around that, though. If you send me a request to connect and there is no personalized note telling me why you want to connect with me, I'm going to deny it. Like I curate my network.
I do that a lot.
I don't need more. I don't need,
Yes,
need
plus
more
one to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to connect with me, tell me why, please. And we'll go from there. So LinkedIn is absolutely best. Pay Simple. We actually have a big move coming up after being in this building for 5+ years. We're moving to another part of town. So we are really busy right now, just sort of like trying to keep our house in order. Later this year, there's absolutely a potential that UX researcher role will open up. And I will shout it from the rooftops if and when it does. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'm just going, and for the people who are not watching the video version, I'm just going to spell both of your names. So Jeff Russell is JEFFRUSSELL, and Dimitri is DMITRY. I don't have my glasses on. Give me a moment here. N as in Nancy, EKRASOV like Victor, SKI. Find them, follow them. And as always, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Debbie Levitt. You can also track me down at deltacx.com. That wraps up this podcast for now. Thanks to everybody who joined in. And of course, thank you to Jeff and Dimitri for making time for us today. And with that, we are out. Please join us next week. Piles of things going on. Monday, I'm doing Busting UX Myths. And I think it's either Wednesday, it's Tuesday. Tuesday, we're doing Amazing Metrics versus BS Metrics. So join us for some great podcasts next week. And thanks again.